The creak of my front door swinging open pulled me out of the legal brief I had been carefully reviewing in my home office. My hand froze mid-sentence as I listened closely. Footsteps echoed sharply across the tile floor, followed by a woman's voice muttering about blatant violations of Section 12.3. I hadn't scheduled any visitors for today, and my housekeeper wasn't due until Thursday. Slowly setting my pen down, I moved quietly toward the top of the stairs. Below me stood a woman in her mid-50s. A tight burgundy blazer stretched across her shoulders, and she clutched a clipboard like it was some kind of weapon. She was already halfway into my kitchen, opening cabinets, inspecting their contents, and snapping photos with her phone. "Improper storage of cleaning supplies," she announced, scribbling aggressively. "That's a $25 fine right there." "Excuse me," I said calmly from above. "What exactly are you doing in my home?" She froze mid-motion, her head snapping upward. Her eyes widened as they landed on the federal court seal embroidered on my polo from last week's charity golf tournament. The clipboard trembled slightly in her manicured grip. I had moved to Willow Creek Estates just 3 months earlier, searching for refuge from the chaos of downtown life and the constant stream of high-profile cases that had defined the last decade of my career. After 20 years on the federal bench, I wanted quiet streets and anonymity. I wanted neighbors who didn't recognize me from headlines. The modest colonial house at the end of Maplewood Court seemed ideal. It sat tucked behind mature oak trees with just enough yard to satisfy HOA requirements I had barely skimmed during closing. My neighbors seemed friendly enough during brief encounters, though more than one had warned me about the HOA president. "Watch out for Nancy Montgomery," my next-door neighbor Gary had said, while carefully trimming his hedges. "We call her Karen around here, just never to her face. She's been running the HOA like her personal kingdom for 5 years. I had nodded politely, thinking I could handle typical suburban politics. After all, I had presided over racketeering trials and constitutional cases. An HOA seemed trivial by comparison. The first notice arrived just 2 weeks after I moved in. A crisp white envelope slipped under my door, claiming my mailbox exceeded the maximum height outlined in subsection 8.4.2 of the community guidelines. I measured myself. It was perfectly compliant. When I called the HOA, Nancy's overly sweet voice dismissed it as a clerical error, but still suggested I replace it just to be safe. The second notice came a week later, stating my recycling bins had been left visible for too long, violating visual harmony rules. That made no sense. I kept them in the garage except on collection day. The third notice cited excessive dandelions in my backyard, despite the fact that I had just paid for professional landscaping. Each time, I responded with polite but firm letters explaining why the violations were unfounded. Nancy's behavior only escalated. She began photographing my property from the sidewalk at odd hours. Occasionally, I would catch glimpses of her burgundy blazer disappearing behind trees when I looked outside. Soon after, mass emails circulated throughout the neighborhood, warning of declining property values and blaming residents who failed to maintain community standards. Then came the intrusions, subtle at first, almost easy to dismiss. A stack of mail slightly out of place. Cabinets I distinctly remember closing left ajar. My garage door opener inexplicably sitting on the kitchen counter. At first, I blamed myself. Stress from the move, long hours, simple forgetfulness. But the night I found my back door unlocked, I knew something was wrong. Installing security cameras took just 1 day. I chose a professional system with motion sensors, night vision, and cloud backups. Then I waited. It didn't take long. Footage from the following Tuesday revealed everything. At 2:17 p.m., Nancy Montgomery approached my front door, glanced around nervously, and pulled a key from her pocket. She let herself in as if she owned the place. That key, I later discovered through discreet inquiries, came from the emergency lockbox required for first responders, something HOA presidents had access to for community safety. She spent 43 minutes inside my home, photographing everything from the contents of my refrigerator to the books on my shelves, muttering about violations and fines. I could have confronted her immediately, but decades on the bench had taught me patience. I wanted her to expose herself completely, so I stayed silent. I kept recording, and I waited. That moment came on a Thursday afternoon. I worked from home intentionally that day, my car hidden in the garage. Nancy arrived at 2:35 p.m., right on schedule. I listened as she wandered to the first floor, her voice drifting upward. Improper shelf spacing in the pantry, she declared. Non-approved water softener brand. And look at this. Store brand pasta. Definitely lowers neighborhood standards. That's when I made my entrance. Nancy Montgomery, I said calmly as I descended the stairs. You're trespassing in my home. She spun around, clutching her clipboard tightly against her chest. I have every right to conduct HOA inspections under the bylaws, she shot back. The bylaws allow exterior inspections. I replied as I reached the bottom step, with 24-hour notice. They do not permit breaking and entering into private residences. That falls under State Criminal Code Section 423.1. Her face flushed a deep crimson, clashing with her blazer. I didn't break anything. I have a key. A key from an emergency lockbox that you misuse for personal purposes, I said. That's theft of services at minimum and possibly fraud. I pulled out my phone and showed her the security footage. I have 3 separate recordings of you entering my home without permission. Each one qualifies as a Class A misdemeanor. Nancy, that's up to a year in jail per incident. The clipboard slipped from her hands, paper scattering across my hardwood floor. You can't prove anything, she snapped. I'm the HOA president. I have authority. Your authority ends at the property line, I said calmly. And speaking of authority, I should introduce myself properly. I paused, letting the silence settle. Judge William Sterling, Federal District Court for the Eastern District. Her expression shifted rapidly. I believe you've already seen my ID badge. I continued. It's on the bookshelf in my office, the one you've been photographing. The color drained from her face. So quickly, I thought she might collapse. Her mouth open and closed, struggling for words. You're lying, you can't be. Would you like to verify my credentials? I asked. Or should we let the police do it? I raised my phone again. I was about to call 911. But if you prefer to turn yourself in voluntarily, I can drive you to the station. This is entrapment, she shrieked, backing toward the door. You set me up. You moved here to destroy our community. I moved here for peace. I corrected. You chose to commit multiple felonies. And no, Nancy, it's not entrapment when you break into someone's home of your own free will. That's just criminal behavior. She tried to push past me toward the door, but I stepped aside calmly. By all means, leave, I said, but understand that I will be pressing charges. The evidence is already secured, and I've documented every false notice you've sent. She stumbled onto the porch, then turned back with what little defiance she could gather. The HOA board will hear about this. You'll be fine. You'll be forced out. I look forward to that meeting, I replied. I'll be bringing my attorney. She specializes in civil rights violations and malicious prosecution. You'll find her very thorough. The following days unfolded exactly as expected. I filed a police report that same afternoon, providing detectives with complete documentation. Footage, dates, and evidence. The charges were straightforward. 3 counts of breaking and entering, misuse of emergency resources, and criminal trespass. The HOA board meeting the next week was packed. Word had spread quickly throughout the neighborhood. Every homeowner who had ever received a questionable fine or threatening letter from Nancy wanted to witness what happened next. I presented my case methodically, just as I had done countless times in court. Security footage from April 15th. I said, connect my laptop to the projector. Ms. Montgomery enters my home without permission at 2:17 p.m. The room gasped as the footage played. April 22nd. 2:31 p.m. April 29th. 2:35 p.m. Each time remaining inside for extended periods. Board member Dennis Kramer, a nervous local accountant, cleared his throat. Nancy, is this true? Nancy, standing beside the attorney she had hired, tried to maintain her composure. I was conducting authorized inspections, she insisted. It's my duty to maintain standards, even inside homes. Nancy, we've discussed this before. Another board member, Barbara Higgins, said firmly, "Our authority is limited to exterior property. This is criminal." The vote to remove her from the board was unanimous, but that was only the beginning. As news spread, more neighbors came forward. Gary revealed she had entered his home while he was on vacation, rearranging his furniture. The Hendersons discovered she had been in their basement taking photos. A young couple at the corner provided footage of her attempting to open their doors and windows. The civil lawsuit I filed sought damages for invasion of privacy, emotional distress, and trespass. My attorney proved to be exactly as thorough as promised. She uncovered years of systematic intrusion. Nancy had been entering homes across the neighborhood, keeping detailed records on residents. Her surveillance went far beyond HOA business. Discovery revealed notebooks filled with personal observations, shopping habits, visitors, even private conversations overheard while trespassing. The criminal trial moved quickly. The evidence was overwhelming, and testimony from multiple victims sealed the case. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Nancy Montgomery was found guilty on all charges. 3 counts of breaking and entering, each carrying up to 12 months in jail, along with fines. At sentencing, the presiding judge, a colleague who had recused me from the case, showed no sympathy. "Miss Montgomery," Judge Robertson said, "you were entrusted with leadership in your community. Instead of serving your neighbors, you violated their most basic expectation of privacy and security. You are sentenced to 18 months in state prison, followed by 3 years of probation. You're also ordered to pay restitution totaling $87,000 to your victims." Nancy's shriek echoed through the courtroom as bailiffs approached. "This isn't fair. I was protecting property values. I was maintaining standards." Her designer heels clicked rapidly against the floor as she was led away, still protesting, still refusing to accept responsibility.